Sorry. If Adam will be here, he sit here, Dave, Johnson over there. We can find
Hi
out.
Russell, how you doing? You. You.
There you go. You hear me now?
Yes, how you doing?
I'm pretty good yourself.
Good. In a few minutes here, we'll get the meeting started. And then I'm gonna turn my laptop around. We were trying to get a projector tonight, but for some reason it is unpresent. So I'm gonna turn you around and you'll get to see the property owners that are attending that may have questions that if they have questions, answers for you or from you. And we got a little synopsis of what's happened. We're gonna go through that real quick. And then we'll just kind of leave it up to everybody that has questions, and hopefully we can get them all answered for them. I appreciate you attending.
Oh, no problem at all. Well, hopefully we can satisfy him. I'm not sure that's possible, but we'll do our best. What time does the meeting starts? Right? Is it
About
started?
about 7 minutes you
Okay.
got.
Okay. That's fine. All right.
This right here. Kind of bullet pointed it.
Love to meet you guys. Is it okay for video if Derek's not here?
Yeah. Oh.
No.
My dad used to have it.
Yeah, right.
It's for the vehicles. Vehicles like and tools and equipment and shit. I need my email address.
Taking over next place.
They're not seen. Second, I was like, he actually showed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to bring it in, so I'll have to. Give it to you. Here, so. You'll have to look it up. Yeah. Yeah. I got one.
Problem.
Must be more people complaining about it.
I will say it is a little bit of an eyesore. I've seen it, but nobody's said anything, so, and it's kind of behind some trees, but I guess somebody's. It's becoming more apparent. If you're looking down there a little bit, the issue is. So I think he's got a double lot and he parks an RV and he's got one of them drive, like a circle drive. So people just tend to look over there and look over there, you see all that construction shit going on.
But it's been there for a while.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, I'll get a. I'll have Wendy send a letter. Yeah, I'm like. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And
It's good for it.
my brother.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Say what they want to do can actually be done. Over drinking out in public and all that. You can do that.
Really?
Mhm.
There's not too many places you can do open carry
Rollins,
all year
French
long.
Quarter, yeah.
I've been down there a couple times for conferences.
You apparently haven't fully appreciated it.
I don't go down there during the party crowd, that's for sure.
Oh, no.
All right, folks, we're gonna get started with the monthly board meeting. Psych. Can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. All right, we do have a quorum. John is going to read a little bit of a synopsis that we have come up with of the different things that have transpired over probably the last month or so. And then we will go through a few things that after hearing or seeing or witnessing or people calling us or emailing us, we have reached out to both legal and our broker to get advice and what direction we need to go. Russell is online, so I will turn my laptop around once we finish this. If anybody wants a copy of this, you're welcome to it after the meeting. I can make copies of it. And then we will have some questions that I guess Nikki or Tim, you guys kind of leading, okay. And then after that, we'll end the meeting and they'll have an open forum, and as long as, you know, everybody's respectful and we're not jumping on top of each other, you know, we'll let it go on as long as till we need answers. So I will hand this part over to John to just get it started.
No.
I don't know. They're asked if they could record it, and I said yes. Yeah.
If there are no motions made for the minutes, motions are the official record of the meetings. So if there are no motions, the audio will be posted on the website like the other meetings are. And depending on the video, we can post that.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so. All right, so what we want to cover here tonight is just kind of a timeline of what's transpired. And we've reached out several times to Russell Weber of O'Connor Companies. They handle the insurance for the POA, and as Dave mentioned, also the attorney. But you know, I think for us to begin with is, let's just set the record straight. The board is not out to stop any fun, any parties, anything that you may have seen floating around. I think we've demonstrated that with the development of Raintree Events and Adventures. We have been, you know, open to everything that has come our way, but it's been certainly a learning experience, and we've had to make changes as we go and as we continue to learn things from that. But, you know, for people that think that the board is trying to stop this, just state two things. Dave personally contributed $500 to the Luau Fund, and once we had said that they had to provide basically restroom supplies, I donated a garbage bag full of stuff for that. So, you know, if we were out to shut the things down, we could have just not done any of that from it. So, you know, I think that, you know, some of our challenges are that after last year's Witches Night Out, it was agreed there would be an event form, and the event form is to be completed so it can be reviewed by the board before we communicate anything. And unfortunately, that's not happening. So things are getting communicated before we ever had a chance to review it. And as I said, we've learned things along the way as we've gone. So, you know, basically how this all started off was, I think everybody's well aware that there was a incident that happened the night of the luau, unrelated to the luau. And after that, I was approached from John Mosley to work with him to get the Jeffco Sheriff Department set up so they could provide security at events. We had vandalism happen after fireworks stuff on July 4th. So the POA would be able to hire it. And the start of that turned into, we had to provide Jeffco Sheriff a certificate of liability insurance. So we had to reach out to Russell's company to get that. And naturally, Russell asked some questions of why do you need the COI for the sheriff's department? So that led to his giving us a response and giving us some pretty straightforward details of what we needed to do to protect Raintree from any liabilities that would arise out of insurance claims, or even risk that our insurance could skyrocket to a point that we can't afford it. So I'm gonna let Dave take it from here.
All right, so I guess to save a little bit of time, the 20,000-foot view of what I'll go over real quick is, and then I'll let you guys get into it. We've kind of been going back and forth with both Nikki and Tim and Nick and John and myself, and the board's all aware of what's going on, as well as I guess most of you guys are as well. The biggest issue is the board has to protect everybody. You guys, us, all the 800 plus homes, 1,700 plus lots that don't have homes, and anybody that is in here at any given time. So when we reached out for that COI for the security, which we thought we were doing the right thing to help, have security out here for any kind of event, not just Witches Night Out, but going forward for any kind of large event, then this is where all the stipulations came in and what our insurance covers and doesn't cover. I wasn't even aware of that. We got about 10 different policies within our umbrella of insurance, so from inland marine to automobile to liability to building. So it's a very sophisticated conglomerate insurance policy from what I could understand. The office reached out to Russell to get the COI for the sheriff's department. There were questions asked of why we need this and whatnot, and briefly overlay of, we want to have this Witches Night Out, and there's some security because we've had some vandalism and whatnot, so we're trying to go down that route. And it kind of just got into what was covered and what wasn't covered, and not really knowing exactly what was going to happen with Witches Night Out. One of the things that we set forth with, I think, Nikki and Tim, and I don't know if anybody else was involved in that meeting, but we created an event farm. So somebody wants to have an event out here on POA property, they submit the form, we get what's going to happen, where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what's involved and whatnot, and make sure that going forward we are covered insurance wise and there's no liabilities on the POA. Obviously in the past we had some oopsies because we didn't know we weren't covered. We thought a waiver of insurance would protect us, which we found out will not. So I'm like I said, I'll have this for you guys to look at, but it was just a thing, an issue of every time we turned around, there was something new coming out. Food truck, and then there was some alcohol, and then there wasn't alcohol, and then it was, all inclusive type stuff. I mean, you've seen all the stuff on social media with, for every so many people, you need so many porta potties and whatnot. I am not an insurance agent, nor I am an attorney, so I don't know the logistics. That's why we let them handle it for us. I think, like I said, Raintree's Events and Adventures, we are all in favor of it. I think it's a great time. I haven't been able to participate in a lot of the events lately, but I did do the cruising last year and it was a blast. From what I hear, it was a blast this year. So things like that are a benefit to the community. It brings everybody together. My hat's off to Nikki and Tim for spearheading it. Carrie, I don't want to leave you out. I know you're a big part of that as well. You're the wingman. But we appreciate what you guys are doing, what you're trying to do, and we want to do everything we can to help you. That's why we have the insurance agent on the phone or on the line. And if there's anything that we can do in coordination with him and the questions you guys have, we are here to help you. Really, it boils down to having general liability for vendors and whatnot. Raintree really wasn't designed to have vendors. It's not like a community event where people pay taxes and people have brought Kimswick up as an example. Well, I have attended that as a vendor as well, and they are. I've heard people say you don't need COI and you don't need this and you don't need that. Well, I had to have a hell of an insurance policy to be able to display my hot tubs there. So I don't know if certain vendors are different than others, but to run electric and water and put a tent up, I had to have a heck of a insurance policy and a permit. That being said, City of Kimswick is designed to have events like that. Strawberry Fest, I forget what all the others are. Apple Butter. There's some over in Illinois that do that strawberry thing as well. So they are more designed for things of that nature. So their insurance policies are directed towards that. Plus they are a city as well. So they, they have a tax income and things like that. And actually I was told during COVID that if the Strawberry Fest didn't go, they might go bankrupt because they rely on that so heavily. I think it really boils down to a lot to do with the vendors and how they're going to be designed and what they're going to be doing. And I'll let Russell answer to all that. But the biggest thing that we've got to protect is this type of insurance is not easy to come by. There's not a lot of companies out there that will write this policy. And two things we don't want to happen: our rates to go up or we get canceled. And if we get canceled, then no telling what could happen with lawsuits. But enough for me, of somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to insurance. I will turn my laptop around. Russell can address anybody that's got a question. Just Nikki, when whoever's talking, just be very clear so he can understand it. And so the audio and the video picks it up. And I don't think we're going to do much of the answering because we are not the experts. So I'm going to leave it up to Russell. Russell, I'm going to turn it around and they're going to probably present some questions to you and hopefully we can answer them.
There's a couple things first.
Hang on one second.
So Raintree has insurance to cover us except for two things: vendors. And a vendor is really described as anybody that comes on Raintree property, common grounds, that is selling, distributing, promoting, anything on it. So, and the other one is around liquor, whether it's sales or distribution of it. So those two things, there are insurance requirements that we're asked to meet. Around that, the other one too is, for an example, when a food truck comes here, if they bring employees, we have to get their, lost my train of thought, their employer liability coverage as well, because we've been stuck in the past where we had a vendor in here that did some work for us we didn't get the insurance. POA ended up having to pay workers' comp on it, if that turns up in an audit. So, those are the things. So basically, any vendor has to have the certificate of liability insurance, depending what they're doing. Like if somebody's out there going to be selling knives and swords, there's going to be a different layer that will be asked in it. Liquor, whether it is from a vendor or a distribution of liquor that was purchased by Raintree Events and Adventures to people is gonna require Jeffco's approval for the liquor, and then it needs a liquor certification on it. The other thing is, we did ask Russell to review the policy that you want to purchase. And it, it protects you. It does nothing additional for Raintree because it doesn't cover the vendors. And it doesn't cover the vendor or the distribution of the liquor. So those are the two items. And actually,
volunteer, the host plans on doing or bring your home beer to the event, has the coverage for it. It says on here, has liability coverage, has a coverage for the attendees, the venue, which is the property, and the sponsor. So
But-
what is it not covering?
Well, let's let Russell
Yep.
handle that. So one thing I do want to let you know, I did reach out to the attorney just to make sure that there wasn't anything that we were doing right or wrong, and he said at this point, there's really nothing for him to do and just follow the guidance of our broker. And if there is something he needs to do, then there's a bigger issue. But Russell, I'm gonna let you, they're all gonna ask you questions, or Nikki's gonna ask some questions, so I will give it to her and.
Could I have just a minute before they ask any questions? Just
Yeah, go
kind
ahead.
of set where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So the recommendations I made to the Raintree board are based on best practices. O'Connor Insurance, while we do pretty much every insurance for any commercial or personal entity there is, our niche is community associations. And we insure over 500 associations just in the St. Louis area. So it's a niche, and we've been doing it for a long time. We've insured your association since 2011. And over that period of time, you've been able to have relatively consistent coverage with very minimal premium increases over time. And that's mostly been a result of low claim activity and the fact that that Raintree hasn't been brought into a lot of these situations. And the insurance market is extremely volatile right now, especially for community associations. The homeowner association is the exposures that you have at Raintree pretty much covers the gamut of any government entity. You have lakes, you have streets, you have pretty much every exposure that you could possibly have to loss. And despite all that, you have high limits, you have low premiums, and again, it's been consistent over time. So all that I brought forth to the board is best practices. Best practices, this is what we would recommend to any of our associations, whether it was a 3-home association or a large community recreational association such as yours. When it comes to vendors, there really is no exceptions with what we recommend to our community associations. All vendors should have a certificate evidencing general liability and workers' compensation, employers' liability, and auto liability. If the company or entity doesn't own autos, then hired and non-owned auto liability will satisfy the auto liability requirement. But the special event policy that you looked at, yes, you can get an endorsement that will cover Raintree Property Owners Association. It will cover the attendees, but what it will not cover is the vendors. The vendors' only source of coverage is to get their own coverage. They have to have their own insurance policy. And while I have friends and neighbors, and I understand the kid that cuts grass, and you want to be more lenient towards those, the reality is anybody selling a product or providing a service is a vendor, and there's no exception to that. And every single one of those should have a certificate of insurance if you're going to use them at on public premises within Raintree. And that's our recommendation to the board. So that's where I'm coming from. Now I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay, so my first question is, so the special event insurance we have, you said it covers everything else except for the vendors.
That is
What?
correct.
So you're saying like if a vendor's item gets broke or a vendor,
No, if the vendor causes liability, so if the vendors, if they're selling food and a bunch of people get food poisoning, if they're selling a product and somebody is hurt by the product, the special event policy does nothing for their liability to whoever is injured as a result of their operations.
so wouldn't that be on the vendor, not on Raintree, or is that still on Raintree?
Well, the trouble is in the absence of them having their own insurance, the attorney is going to come after Raintree for their negligence in not requiring the controls to make sure that the people operating on public premises had the proper insurance before they were allowed on. So if they don't have workers' compensation and they're injured while doing whatever it is they're doing, they absolutely can have a claim under Raintree's workers' compensation policy. And the liability, the same thing. If they don't have insurance, if that person doesn't have insurance, the chance that a suit is going to be alleged against Raintree for negligence in allowing it to happen is exponential.
So the issue is just with the vendors, it's not with the event. The event can go on, but it's each.
The event is not a problem, and no event is a problem necessarily. Again, if the vendors have the certificates of insurance that provide that coverage, then there's no issue.
So any future events, and this included, each vendor that is wanting to come here, we can't even put a sign up saying you shop at your own risk. We are not liable. This has to be in it. I'm just getting clarity that we have to have a policy that covers those vendors specifically, correct?
Correct. Yes, that the vendor should provide a certificate of insurance with Raintree as the certificate holder, which just all that is a snapshot, is an evidence stating that this coverage is in place. And that's all it is. That's it. Just shows that they have the coverage.
So, curiosity, for instance, last year, my daughter sold rock necklaces. Now she has to provide this as well?
There should be no exceptions to the rule.
So
I understand the exposure is low. I get that, but the reality is, from the board's perspective, how can they pick and choose which person has to fulfill the requirement and which one doesn't? The first time they do that, the person sitting right next to you is going to come back, well, they didn't have to have it, why do I? So the board has to, their policies have to be unilateral.
So we no longer can have the garage sale.
I'm sorry?
You can no longer have the subdivision garage sale because we have over 500 people come in here going down the streets. And if they break their ankle, you have kids on the side of the streets and stuff selling lemonade. They would have to have insurance. So the kids cannot sell insurance.
Well, if they're selling insurance at their house on their driveway in their yard, or selling lemonade at their house, the garage sale is on the homeowner's property.
I understand that.
right, but
There were lemonade stands in common areas last year during the garage sale. And it's been several years. We need to make sure we get that out there. And like I said, the garage sale can no longer go on.
So move the
can go on.
lemonade stand to somebody's driveway.
Let's clear one thing up here. What was done in the past, let's forget it ever happened, because we made mistakes on not having the right insurance, whether it be the garage sale whether it be the cleanup, whether it be anything on POA property that assumes what he said, selling or providing a service. If that is on POA property, it needs to have a COI.
But also like Halloween, when we go down there with the golf, and I'm just asking, or when we go down there with our golf carts, because I don't get any kids to my house.
Is anybody selling or providing a service?
Yes.
People that are not. Well, I mean, we're kidding.
Okay.
Just don't, it needs koozies, they have cameras at the beach.
Well, hang on a minute. It's getting a little noisy. Russell, the question is on Halloween, when we give out candy, people bring bags of candy down and they bring their kids down to the boat ramp area and they hand out Halloween candy. Would that need a COI from each person that hands out?
No, that's,
candy?
they're not selling it, they're giving it away. There's no charge, there's no duty
I
owed
think
in that
that- I
particular.
think in giving it away, separate, if you're promoting a business, like you're gonna hand out somebody's business koozies, they need the COI if they're doing it. If you're, well, you're promoting your business out there, so,
Just like give them a-
okay, different. You're, right, the other part, yeah, hang on. The other part is, if you're going to be handing out liquor on POA property, then you're gonna have to follow the liquor requirements. So as an example, BYOB is Joe brings his beer and he can share a beer with you if he wants, but he can't bring 5 cases of beer and hand out beer to everybody and anybody down there on it. If it is, then you're distributing liquor and there's insurance ramifications to that. So BYOB.
So let me just be clear again. Anything that was done in the past, don't use as a guideline going forward, because we are gonna be fixing everything as we go forward, and that's ignorance on our part.
I would want clarity on this, because I do give, and a lot of us do, and as business owners, give out things. Like whether we're donating to the country club, which I know is different, but if I'm doing certain events around here, I'm just donating things, I could ask for all kinds of stuff. Anytime I'm gonna donate some, I have to have some insurance policy for that.
Well,
Doesn't
hang on.
sound like it if you're not.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't say that. If you're going to donate things and you're going to put together the goodie bag that you hand to people, that's different than you setting up your business on POA property and distributing your business goods. So you cannot set up your business on POA property and be promoting your business, handing out things about your business, free or not, because then you're a business and a vendor on POA property. If you're going to donate things for a event goodie bag and everybody gets the event goodie bag, that's fine, as long as you're not putting liquor in it.
Very.
So if somebody wants to promote their business and they put up a banner on the beach, they put up their, I can't even think of what they're called. Tents. That's what I was looking for. But they have their, logos on, people do it every day down there, with logos on everything. But are they gonna have to fill out a form to hold their company parties down there and hand stuff out?
Russell,
It's just a form.
did you hear?
So
the question?
again, not entirely. Can you reiterate it for me?
Mainly if somebody does decide that they want to set up their tent down at the beach and hand stuff out, are they going to have to fill out some kind of event form and submit the COI to the board?
So I don't know what the board's policies are completely with respect to having those type of activities on the common premises. I would have thought there was some sort of rules that in order to have anything other than for just the general enjoyment of the residents, that there was always some sort of rule that, again, if you're going to set up a tent and promote your business, I wouldn't think you would just go down to the beach and set up a tent. I would think that would have always had to be pre-approved.
Can I ask a quick question?
That would
Hang on
always
a
have to
second.
be-
I would say
Hang on
that-
a minute. We didn't hear the end of what he said. So I think.
Well,
what he-
I'm just not sure what you were getting at. Generally, again, if like I attend fairs for like the Creve Corps and the Afton Chamber. And when we set up a tent at one of the chamber events, we have to have evidence of insurance. And we're not selling anything. All we're doing is having a tent on the premises. The exposure there isn't really that we're promoting our business or anything else. The exposure is just the tent there and the fact that someone could get hurt. Our tent could blow over and hit somebody. Somebody could trip on a string that's holding the tent up or something like that. So it's more of a premises liability issue if you're not actually selling anything. But if you have a space for your business and it's there to promote your business, typically a COI would be required if it's on the common premises.
So Carrie, to answer your question, I think yes, at least a form.
That makes sense. You're gonna have to plan that event anyway. If you're gonna have to plan it. So then just fill out the event form with you guys and then get a COI.
Yeah.
Submit it then, and then you review it, and then you let whoever, know if it's approved, and then move forward with that promotional.
I mean, I would think
Right.
if you have a tent canopy and it has, I'm not trying to single anything out, but Tim, if it says Fulkerson Group on the tent, but it's just a canopy, you're out there in the water playing, just a normal, day at the beach. I don't think you require for that. If you're going to be handing out, distributing and talking to people about Fulkerson Realty or Fulkerson Group, then you would need to do the COI.
But I understood it like that, but if you're just
Right.
there and we're.
If you're just there and you just so happen to have a canopy tent that says Fulkerson Group on it or CCI Network or two men in a spa dolly but all you're doing
Get
is
me in the middle of it.
if all you do is hanging out on the beach and it just so happens that the thing's logoed, that's not, it's if you're going to conduct anything, promote the business out of it, then it's different story.
Hang on 1 second, Carrie. Greg, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the agent. Basically, there's a liquor license, which has to be licensed from the state, then in Hillsborough. Then they can serve here. Next is a merchant's license if someone is selling large volumes of something. But if a girl is selling trinkets that she makes in her basement, that's a peddler's license. Are those people covered too, or they gotta have, $100 million policy or $1 million policy?
Yeah, so let me address that real quickly, because again, ultimately, like I said, the board really, and again, try to put yourself in the board's position. Like I said, how can they not unilaterally have these rules? Because again, you absolutely can understand the second they let one person go, you're absolutely going to get the other person saying you let this person go. So that you have to understand that that's a reality. Second, the person who's doing something like trinkets out of their basement or something with maybe, $2,000 a year in annual sales, maybe not even that. I mean, you could get $1 million liability policy for something like that on an annual basis for as little as $300, which is probably as much as they would pay for a one-day single event policy to cover themselves. So the exposure matches, it's designed to match, the premium matches the exposure. If there really isn't much exposure, it doesn't cost them nearly as much to satisfy their requirement as somebody that really does have an exposure. So again, while I understand people are wanting to protect these people who are trying to develop something and everybody, nobody wants to prevent a kid from, trying to sell something or the crafts or anything. But the reality is those exposures can actually be covered for, again, on an annual basis, for where you wouldn't have to worry about it. They'd have the COI and you're also kind of teaching them what business is all about, covering their exposure. So.
Hang on, Joe. Carrie, Joe, go ahead.
At the luau, my 9-year-old grandson was selling lemonade. He don't make anything. Yeah, he's 9 years old. He can't get an insurance policy.
I mean, nobody here is disputing that there's little to no exposure from a lemonade stand. You know, I am not here to say, no way, can you have a lemonade stand, you know? I mean, whether or not anybody follows the best practices that we recommend isn't necessarily up to me. My whole goal for Raintree is to be able to continue to offer consistent coverage with minimal premium increases and keep their insurance program contained so that again, you're able to continue to operate with, you know, some consistency and knowing what's going to happen from year to year. We had another association very similar to yours that just got non-renewed, and they are looking at substantial premium increases compared to what they had. So, and some of, you know, this, it's a little bit outside of what you do, but some of the condominiums and stuff where we actually insure the living units, some of those are taking 300% premium increases. So it's real. There's a real situation out there. And my goal is to protect the long-term feasibility of the association. I'm not trying to prevent anybody from having any fun. I'm realistic. I know a lemonade stand isn't that big a deal, but the reality is again, from the board perspective, they have to have guidelines that they follow in order to protect the interests of the entire association. And that's all any of us are trying to do. That's all I'm trying to do.
And is there a way that you're thinking, you know, I know, that as soon as we say that the kids can do the lemonade, which I'm totally for, there's going to be someone that's going to push that line that's not going to be okay. So just for grins here, let's try to come up with a rules of what would be acceptable, what is not, and try to be a little clearer on that, because as soon as you don't say, you know, someone's going to go a little bit more left or a little bit more right. So
well, I mean, the easiest way to deal with it, I think, for the more innocuous exposures like a lemonade stand, is to do it on your individual property. And then it's not an issue if you're not on the common premises. So if you're doing that lemonade stand in your own driveway, it's not an issue.
I think the issue comes down to, you know what if they bought tainted lemonades and they start handing out food poisoning to people? You know, it's going to fall back to, they have no insurance. It's going to fall back to Raintree. And well, if they're on their own property, if they're on private property, it's just that this is all about if it's happening on POA common ground. It's not about what you do on your own personal property.
That is absolutely true.
Pardon me? Well, Raintree as the POA does not do any events. So the events are all done by independent of the POA.
Garage sale. Yes.
Yep, so it's all separate, you know, from that aspect of it, so.
So I have another question. If somebody dies from getting somebody's lemonade that was tainted, if you're in the city of St. Louis and somebody shoots somebody, the city being sued?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
The city gets sued. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes, it does.
There's when it comes to cities and governments, there's some special immunity.
City gets sued.
There's some special immunity that they have, and it's capped, but governments do get sued all the time. They like I said, their ultimate liability may be capped because of regulations that you don't get to enjoy, but they do get sued all the time. We've insured police departments and first responders and all those types of things, and they have the same exposures just like everybody else does. They get sued.
Let me give you a number here. If our insurance goes up 300%, it may as well be catastrophic to Raintree. It will increase the premium probably something like $150,000. For us to be able to come up with that money, life as you know it here in Raintree is gonna have to change because the only way we can get the money is to cut something. I don't know what, but you know.
Or raise your.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we can't do that. That's not at our disposal. So, you know, protecting the, you know, that the insurance doesn't get non-renewed or the rates don't run out of control is a critical element.
John, you,
Question. Can we get some logistics here as to why we're here? Like, Nikki, how many vendors are we talking about? And how many apps?
About 30 to 35. 30 to 35. Only one has a COI, and that's the fire pit guy, because his items are more, somebody can cover things, you know, get hurt on his big fire pits. The rest never need them. They said, we don't have them. We're not gonna purchase them for one event, because it's not something they're gonna spend a couple $100 on just for one event to, you know, because they're craft. Their ladies do this part-time. They make wreaths and jewelry and trinkets, and the food vendor does. The food vendor has all this stuff.
Is there any way?
Well, at the moment,
Do they do more than just this event here?
We don't need them anywhere else.
Can I also just really quickly, I left out the part about the liquor liability and I wanted to address that a little bit better as well. With the liquor liability, there's basically two kinds of liquor liability. There's what they call host liquor liability, and then there's regular liquor liability. Host liquor liability basically is if Raintree has a Christmas party and gives away alcohol. There's absolutely no charge, nothing. They give it away and they get sued. And, you know, as long as they're doing it legally within the, you know, there's nothing illegal or anything, they're covered for host liquor liability. Liquor liability is when you're in the business of selling, distributing, where you're making some profit, there's some remuneration from liquor. And so if you're doing a thing like you're showing here where it's $35, but liquor is part of that all-inclusive package, it would be hard to argue that there wasn't a remuneration for that alcohol. People wouldn't be buying the $35 package if it wasn't for the alcohol. So it is very important that if the food truck is providing alcohol, that they do have actual liquor liability, and that's shown on the certificate. And again, I just wanted to bring that up because that's a big exposure, obviously, if somebody gets drunk and goes and hits somebody on the way home or something.
So currently, to answer the question too, is nobody's COI meets what Russell's saying because they all handed us basically a blank COI, so it doesn't say Raintree's the insured.
Well, no, Raintree would just be the certificate holder.
The certificate holder. It doesn't say anything about Raintree on it. It's just.
But
got
mainly,
their
again, the three boxes you want to see checked are the general liability, the workers' compensation, and the auto liability, either via hired and non-owned or an actual auto liability policy if they have owned vehicles. Like the food truck would absolutely have a business automobile policy.
Okay, so on that, the food truck, they have an event or just a temporary liquor license and a permit through the city that they get. Does that suffice?
I mean, that may suffice with their ability to legally sell it. I don't know what the ordinance is in Jefferson County for a food truck selling liquor.
City Hall to get it.
But if that's what they're required to have, that's what they're required to have. So, but that doesn't eliminate that, you know, that doesn't prove whether or not they have the liquor liability insurance coverage.
What do they need to get the liquor liability insurance to prove that?
They need to, it should show on their insurance certificate that liquor liability. And it's written typically 1 million each common cause is what it's called under liquor liability. But But again, I mean, if they're selling liquor, their insurance agent should be able to get that for them.
Well, they don't sell liquor. This is.
Well, I understand, but if they're selling it for this one day, they're
They're
selling.
not selling it. They're doing all you can eat. And they're just, I mean, it's not all, there's not all having.
I understand, but that's just, like I said, I can send you a copy of what a host liquor liability or what a liquor exclusion looks like. And it specifically says, you know, if you're in the business of, and again, I would think any good attorney could argue that they are in the business of, if that was part of your $35 all you can get.
It is, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, your $35, it includes X, Y, Z, and it includes the options of liquor or non-alcoholic drinks and food.
Hey,
So, yes,
Russell.
It is being sold.
Could you send John an example of that just so we have it?
I can, I don't have that. I'll get that to you tomorrow if that's all
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah.
Because I think the other thing Russell shared with me is, like, for a vendor, non-liquor, if they are, depending on what they're doing, like if you have somebody out here who's doing knives and swords and stuff, then, you know, we're probably gonna ask them to make sure their COA has us as an additional insured primary non-contributory. The liquor one would have to have that plus I'm gonna butcher this word, a waiver of subrogation.
Waiver of subrogation, yeah.
In Raintree's favor. I don't even know what that means, but
It basically means that the person who's providing the certificate, their insurance is absolutely primary. Yours cannot be called on to contribute, even if it's argued that you were partially responsible. And your insurance will not come into play under those circumstances until or unless their insurance is completely exhausted, if it is endorsed correctly.
and I think that kind of sums it up, is we can't let Raintree be the first line of insurance defense for somebody that doesn't have it or doesn't have the proper amount, because if we do that, then, you know, we're more likely to be found liable or negligent in it, and that exposes us to, you know, that catastrophic raise in the insurance premiums that we have no way of paying for.
And again, it's like attorneys are gonna look for a back door. So even if they can't get to the insurance from the liability perspective, then they'll try to get it from the directors and officers for not following their, you know, doing their due diligence under the governing documents and acting in accordance with the governing documents. So again, you know how it works. Attorneys, they're looking for money when something happens, and they're going to do the best they can to find an avenue to it. So.
John?
Just for clarification, these vendors can buy a single event policy, is that correct?
The vendors themselves can buy a single event policy that will protect them by themselves. But like I said, in most cases, for a lot of them, they could probably get an annual policy for close to what it's going to cost them for a single event policy. And that's not always true, obviously. It kind of depends on what they're doing. But like I said, somebody like these, you know, like a craft person, they could get a policy pretty cheap.
Okay, so devil's advocate here, 3 or 4 of them get together, all in one tent. That one policy?
They'd have to incorporate.
Yeah, not if they're 4 individuals all selling their own goods. If it was, if they
Keep them
formed an
business early.
LLC and they're all selling the same crafts and it's a business. Again, I don't make the rules. I don't make the rules. I really don't make them. I'm just telling you what the best practices are and what is going to keep you from having issues if you follow those best practices.
Okay, Russell, I think this last thing. So I have a certificate of liability insurance here for name and already business. She's saying she could put all the vendors underneath hers.
I'm sorry, she's saying what?
she's gonna put all the vendors underneath her. She has everything we need underneath her insurance, because all the vendors will be underneath her business. She owns a craft business. So all the vendors would be underneath her certificate of liability insurance. None of them are taking money. All the money's going to her. So they all have codes. Anybody buys anything, everything goes to her, then they would all be covered underneath her insurance, right?
And they would never be reimbursed by her?
Her insurance company's
No.
probably not gonna be happy.
No,
but-
so again, there's another thing to understand. So basically, if Raintree hires a vendor and they don't have insurance, and then the audit comes around and they show they paid XYZ company $1,000, and then then the auditor asks for a certificate of insurance. If that certificate of insurance shows that they have general liability and shows that they have workers' compensation, then it's nothing. There's no charge. It just goes on. If they don't have either of those, they can pick those up and charge Raintree a premium at audit, because there is a potential to get at their insurance through that. That's why they're legally allowed to charge a premium for that. But that protects Raintree. That does not protect the vendor. The vendor is still they're without protection for themselves. So
She owned a shop and she had all vendors stuff in her shop and in her fairs. So she always had vendors underneath this, under her store, under her business. Cause she had all kinds of.
you can.
Had them all under there. So she said I could have them all under here because I have vendors under here all the time. Because in my business, in my shop, I had all vendors.
She can't, I see what you're saying. There can be vendors coverage for certain things. I can't elaborate on that right now. I don't want to speak without being 100% certain of what I'm saying. There is vendors coverage that you can get under your own policy for certain circumstances, but I'm not prepared to elaborate on that right now. I would have to review the form and read that in order to respond to that.
For you to send.
Let me just say one thing, that I do have some experience in that, Nikki, and selling hot tubs at an event. I have my own insurance, and I partnered with a guy that sold outdoor sound systems and TVs and whatnot, and we partnered in a booth. And I ran him under my insurance and got my hand slapped, because if anything would have happened pertaining to what he does, my insurance isn't covered for that. Now, that may be different if she has all this other stuff, but I cannot sell outdoor entertainment sound systems under what my current policy of selling hot tubs is. That would be.
Insurance, but Dawn, she had the Name It Already store, but it wasn't her craft. She had a bunch of different vendors' crafts all in there. So underneath this policy, she had to have all these, because it wasn't just her stuff. She's protecting all these other
It's
vendors.
still like saying crap.
Yeah,
It's almost-
yeah.
It's not like someone's got.
Right, but that's it, just to clarify, that's at her place of business.
So this is how I think the vendor's coverage works typically.
So real quick question. So like this particular thing, she said she even goes to Kim, like Kim's what, just throwing out there because it's easy one. And she covers all these other vendors underneath her. So in this instance, we're really only having one vendor and she has it.
A lot of times she'll.
Because she's also taking all the money.
Vendor stuff.
And like they never see that policy.
Hey, Russell, real quick, if they did something like that, is the $1 million number the right number anymore?
Okay, first of all, I didn't totally catch what they're doing, what you said they're doing.
It's pretty simple.
So let me rephrase it for you, Russell. There's a lady that has a craft store somewhere, a brick and mortar building,
Okay,
that carries multiple people, vendors, crafts in her store, that they're
like
saying.
an consignment shop or something like that?
Yeah.
Boots?
It's a craft store, but
No?
they take while they were across two firms. They're friends and they-
Well, I can't speak to this specific insured, but typically the way a vendor's endorsement works, it's only really allowed, like, if I have a product and there's vendors selling my product, I can get coverage to cover the vendors that are selling my product. I can't get coverage for vendors that are selling their own product.
We'll have to send this to you because I don't think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, we got Betsy.
Betsy, go ahead.
This will help, but correct me if I'm wrong. Under the law, there's such a thing as strict liability. A person that manufactures a product has strict liability. What that means, and anybody then that makes a product has strict liability. What that means is, in a court of law, if a lawsuit's brought against you, they don't have to prove negligence. You're liable just by virtue of the fact that you made the product. So does that make it any clearer?
I checked with home, like, sample.
Anybody
can sue anybody.
Anybody can sue anybody, but, and granted, if you're making a rocket ship, your liability exposure is a whole hell of a lot more than if you're making a bracelet. But still in all, it's strict liability.
So Nikki, one thing that just, it's kind of triggering, because I've been involved with multiple vendors at events before. But if she has a store and people are bringing crafts in, are they selling them under her name or are they selling them under the individual vendors' names?
What tends to happen is,
So that's where her insurance would cover her only if they insurance, yeah, that's what right. You got to be careful though when you start bringing.
It follows, like I said, it follows whose product it is. And
Right.
that's what I'm saying. That's why it's different. So like I have a friend that has a shop in these antique malls. And they all, all the shops or all the little spaces in the antique malls are, typically sell the same kind of stuff. But she has to have her own insurance for her space. The antique mall can't carry coverage for the people in selling their own product. So that's what I'm saying. That's the way vendors coverage work. If it's her product and all these people are selling her product, then she could get vendors coverage to protect them for selling her product, but not from selling their own product.
Yes, ma'am.
I would say that Nikki, that what she would need to do is talk to her agent.
Yeah.
Because the kind of coverage that she has is probably specific to what she does.
Okay.
If this applies to what she normally does, her agent can say, oh yeah, you're good, or add whatever is needed.
I think she did, because she even put it in Raintree Plantation's name. She gave, she's like, here, take this. I do this all the time. Just as long as you don't have more than 40 vendors, she said, that's all I can carry. She said, she's in Nebraska, so she couldn't make it. She could probably explain better what this commercial general liability is. But she just kind of said, like, here, I already reached out. We had to put in the certificate holders, you guys, and so.
And the other thing would be is, are the 30 people that are going to be under her with her, are they going to be in 30 different tents, 30 different areas?
I don't know. We were waiting to see how this even is possible, and then to kind of see how she normally set that up. I was all it kind of came back.
Her specific agent, yeah, the one that could address any of those questions.
Right.
So I don't.
I mean,
don't know
the
if
way to really answer it is not look at that certificate, but ask to see the form that provides the vendor's coverage. Because again, what that certificate you may think that does may not be anything in actuality what it does. If you actually saw the form that provided the vendor's coverage, it would answer your question. And I'd be able to answer your question, but I'm relatively certain it's exactly what I just said. If they're selling her product, it will cover them. If they're selling their own product, it will not.
I'd be real careful, I'd ask a bunch.
If you can get that form, Nikki, we'll forward it to Russell.
Well, that'd be their insurance policy, right?
Well, whatever part of that, whatever the form is in the policy. The declaration page or whatever.
Again, you know, I just want to reiterate one more time.
Hey,
I
folks,
assume
hang
we're
on.
getting close to the end, but again, I mean, it isn't my goal. It isn't the board's goal. It's nobody's goal to not be able to do the things you guys want to do. It's just a matter of protecting the whole of the entire association for the long term. These are the best practices. If you choose to follow them, you'll end up having good results. If you don't, sooner or later, it's going to bite you. That's what it comes down to.
Luckily, we haven't been bid already. Anybody else got any questions? But if you can get that form, I'll forward it to Russell and see what he says and.
She'll be back today or tomorrow. Then I'll let her have her reach out to her insurance guy.
And then we need to have the food vendor send you a copy of theirs.
Yeah, anybody that you get a COI from, send it to us and we'll send it to Russell and make sure it covers what it needs to cover.
If something needs to be changed, we'll get a direction of what needs to be done and what can be done, so we can just go down it right now.
Actually, just send it to John because he's been working with Russell directly.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure. We just- Okay, I'll just-
So, I just,
Form twice and he hasn't got it.
so.
I actually forwarded that to him when you sent it to me. You're interrupting my Florida days.
So for the food truck, if the food truck's going to be, if you're sticking with the all-inclusive package, his policy needs to have clearly stated the liquor liability coverage.
That's correct.
For the food truck, if you're sticking with the all-inclusive package, his certificate of insurance needs to clearly state that the liquor liability is included, and it's written as $1 million liquor liability, each common cause. The certificate has to name Raintree POA as additional insured primary and non-contributory with a waiver of subrogation in Raintree's favor.
Chance for me to copy of all that?
$2.
But not my phone.
Yeah.
That fast.
Yes,
I've got two.
just give me your, after we're done, give me your email and I'll send it to you.
I would have given you my copy, but it's got my notes on it now.
You're next.
Well, I can put them on there and type it up for you. Anybody else got any questions?
I appreciate you guys allowing me, and again, anytime there's a question, I'm happy to answer it. You know, I'm like anybody else. I occasionally make a mistake, but I try not to spit out answers without knowing what I'm talking about. So if you send me anything, I'll research it before I give you an answer. So.
All right, Russell, I appreciate you joining. Thanks for taking the time. And we'll be sending you some information probably in the next couple days.
All right, very good. Enjoy your witches' night out.
Thank you.
Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye.